Far beyond the well-charted sectors of the galaxy, where stars flickered faintly and the silence of space seemed endless, something vast and terrifying appeared. A fleet, unlike anything ever seen by known civilizations, slowly emerged from the darkness. These alien ships were immense, their hulls gleaming with strange, shifting lights that seemed almost alive. The shapes of the vessels were not like the sleek fighters or cargo freighters common across the galaxy, but massive, almost organic, as if constructed by some ancient intelligence far beyond human understanding. Their technology was unfamiliar, and clearly far advanced. The entire fleet moved in perfect harmony like a single living entity, and radiated a power that sent waves of unease through anyone who watched. When the ships reached the central communication arrays of nearby star systems, they broadcasted a message, a chilling proclamation to all who could hear it. The voice was calm, but carried a weight that made the skin crawl. They claimed to be gods, not mere rulers or conquerors, but actual gods. Beings of ultimate power who had traveled across the stars to bring order to what they called lesser species. Their message was clear and demanding. All intelligent life must bow before them and accept their rule or face complete destruction. Entire star systems, even those once proud and strong, trembled before this declaration. Some sent emissaries begging for mercy, while others silently prepared for war. The silence that followed the message was heavy and thick, as if the universe itself held its breath. Meanwhile, far from the chaos of political debate and frightened leaders, aboard the human warship USS Resolute, the mood was very different. The ship was small compared to the Divine Fleet, but it was well-armed and crewed by some of humanity's best pilots and soldiers. Captain Alina Ward stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the endless black of space where the enemy ships floated like ominous shadows. Unlike the leaders who saw only fear and submission, Elena's mind was sharp with determination and cautious. She had heard stories about the human race being weak, slow to adapt, and easy to defeat. Yet she knew something others had forgotten, that humans were survivors. Time and again, humans had faced impossible odds and had come through by relying on their courage, ingenuity, and willpower. Lena refused to accept the idea that these alien gods were unstoppable. As the Resolute's communication officer repeated the message from the Divine Fleet, Elena's crew exchanged worried glances, but she raised her voice firmly. "We are not giving up. We never have." The words echoed in the command room, a small but defiant spark in the vast cold of space. Suddenly, the calm was shattered by a high-priority alert. The Resolute had received a distress call from a human colony on the edge of known space. The colony was a small cluster of settlements on a harsh, rocky planet, far from the major hubs of civilization. The message was desperate but clear. The colony was under immediate threat from the Divine Fleet's advanced forces. The ships had already begun bombarding the surface, wiping out communication arrays and cutting off any hope of outside help. The settlers were vulnerable and isolated, and their survival depended entirely on the Resolute reaching them in time. Captain Ward's heart pounded with urgency. This was not just a call for help, it was a test. If the Resolute failed to protect this small human outpost, it would send a signal to the rest of the galaxy that humanity could be crushed without resistance. Without hesitation, Alina ordered the ship to full speed. Every crew member prepared for battle, checking weapons, shields, and emergency protocols. The tension on the bridge was thick, but no one showed fear. Each person knew that this fight was more than just about a single colony. It was about proving that humans would not bow to anyone. As the Resolute closed the distance to the colony, the stars seemed to blur into streaks of light. Lena looked out at the void ahead, knowing that once they crossed the invisible line into the enemy's sphere of influence, nothing would be the same. The Divine Fleet's forces were everywhere advanced. Fighters that moved with impossible speed and capital ships that unleashed weapons capable of tearing apart entire planets. The colony was like a fragile candle flame in a storm, but the Resolute was humanity's shield. Tension was unbearable, yet beneath it was a quiet hope that burned brighter than any star. As the Resolute neared the colony, the first signs of the Divine Fleet's attack came into view. Plumes of smoke rose from the surface, and the once vibrant settlements were now darkened ruins. The ship's sensors picked up enemy fighters patrolling aggressively, guarding the last pockets of resistance. Lena's crew went into action. Pilots launched into space, ready to engage in dogfights, while gunners prepared to strike enemy vessels with precision. The captain's voice cut through the comms with calm authority. Remember, we fight not because we are the strongest, but because we refuse to be broken. Hold the line. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. For the first time since the Divine Fleet had appeared, a spark of resistance ignited. Beacon of hope amid overwhelming darkness. The battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. The USS Resolute surged through the blackness of space, every system on the ship humming with energy as it raced toward the endangered colony. Ahead, the quiet destruction already unfolding was impossible to ignore. The Divine Fleet's forces had begun an unprovoked and ruthless assault on the rocky planet below, their ships hovering like predatory shadows, releasing powerful energy blasts that reduced entire buildings to rubble. The sky above the colony glowed with explosions, and thick clouds of dust and debris obscured the horizon. The once peaceful settlements were being torn apart with terrifying efficiency. Captain Alina Ward stood firm on the bridge, her eyes narrowing, as the scenes of devastation flashed across the view screen. This was not just a battle for territory, it was a fight for hope itself. She knew that the Divine Fleet expected an easy victory, a quick submission from a fragile, isolated group. What they did not expect was the Resolute and its crew, human defenders who had no intention of surrendering. As the warship entered the battle zone, the calm and calculated atmosphere aboard shifted instantly to action. The pilots launched from their bays, darting through enemy fire with astonishing agility. The Resolute itself became a blur of motion, twisting and turning to avoid the massive energy blasts aimed at its hull. Each maneuver was calculated and bold, combining skill with an almost instinctual daring that came from years of training and a fierce desire to survive. The crew worked as one, their voices calm but urgent, a symphony of efficiency amidst chaos. What happened next caught the Divine Fleet off guard. Their overwhelming power and advanced technology had made them arrogant, convinced that no resistance could match their might. But the humans fought with a kind of unpredictable creativity that defied expectation. Instead of meeting the enemy head-on in the predictable way, the Resolute used hit-and-run tactics, striking where the enemy least expected. The ship's weapons targeted weak points in the alien formations, creating confusion and forcing the attackers to scramble to regroup. At times, the Resolute would dive into the thick of enemy fighters, weaving through their ranks with precision, firing rapid bursts that disabled key systems before pulling away in a flash. The enemy was powerful, but the humans were relentless and cunning, adapting to every new threat with quick thinking and teamwork. Energy shields shimmered under assault, engines flared as the ship dodged death by fractions of a second. And every member of the crew felt the pressure of the moment, but no one faltered. Captain Ward's voice was steady and clear as she directed her crew, her confidence becoming a shield stronger than any technology. The battle was no longer just about protecting a colony. It had become a statement, far above. The chaos in the towering flagship of the Divine Fleet, the atmosphere was strikingly different. The once confident and cold commanders watched the unfolding fight with growing disbelief. They had seen themselves as gods, invincible beings, far above any species they encountered. Their immense power, drawn from ancient and mysterious technology, had crushed entire worlds without resistance. But now, these humans were challenging that power, refusing to bow or flee. The gods' pride was bruised as after each human strike, their carefully constructed formations faltered. Their weapons, though devastating, seemed less effective against the unpredictable tactics of the Resolute. Whispers of doubt began circulating among the officers. How could such fragile creatures show such resilience? How could their willpower bend the tides of battle? The flagship's command center, once filled with confident orders and declarations of conquest, was now a place of tension and uncertainty. Some questioned if they had underestimated humanity. Others feared that this small warship might ignite a spark of rebellion across the galaxy. Back on the Resolute, the crew remained focused. Each moment of the fight revealed new strengths in the human spirit. Engineers rerouted power to reinforce shields when the enemy's assault intensified. Communications officers hacked into the enemy's coordination signals, sowing confusion among the attacking ships. The medical team stood ready to aid the wounded, a silent reminder that every life mattered in this desperate stand. The battle was far from over, but the humans had shown that strength alone did not guarantee victory. Their adaptability, cunning, and sheer determination made them unpredictable opponents. Captain Ward realized that the story of this fight was no longer hers alone. It was becoming a symbol. Other species, watching from afar, began to question the Divine Fleet's claims of godhood. Humans, once seen as insignificant and weak, could defy the gods. What hope might there be for others? As the fight stretched into hours, the colony below began to rally. Survivors and defenders, inspired by the Resolute's bravery, took up arms and fought alongside the human warship's pilots. Together, they created pockets of resistance that slowed the Divine Fleet's advance. It was a small victory, but in the vastness of space, even a small spark could become a wildfire. Captain Ward felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders, but also the fire of hope burning brighter than ever. This battle was only the beginning. If humanity could stand against beings claiming to be gods, perhaps the galaxy itself could stand united against tyranny and fear. The clash between the USS Resolute and the Divine Fleet was more than a fight. For survival, it was a struggle to prove that no matter how powerful one might seem, courage and heart could turn the tide. In the cold darkness of space, the first cracks appeared in the god's armor, and the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would come next. The battles around the colony had grown more intense. The clash between the USS Resolute and the Divine Fleet reaching a new level of desperation. Despite their advanced technology and overwhelming numbers, the gods' forces were beginning to show cracks under the pressure of the human resistance. In the midst of the chaos, the Resolute's crew executed a bold and unexpected move. They captured a high-ranking alien officer during a risky boarding operation on one of the smaller enemy ships. The officer had once been a proud warrior, filled with arrogance and convinced of the Divine Fleet's invincibility. But now, bound and isolated aboard the human ship, his confidence was shattered. Under intense but careful interrogation, his facade slowly crumbled, and he revealed secrets that sent shockwaves through the human command. The so-called gods were not gods at all, at least not in the way they claimed to be. Their extraordinary powers and near-miraculous technology were fueled by a rare and precious energy source that existed only in a few remote star systems scattered across the galaxy. This energy was the core of their strength, powered their weapons, shields, and faster-than-light travel capabilities. Without it, their ships lost much of their effectiveness. Their mighty energy blasts became weak flickers, and their shields faltered. This revelation changed everything for Captain Alina Ward and her crew. They now understood that the Divine Fleet's dominance was not absolute. Their power was tied to a fragile and limited resource that could be targeted. The key to victory lay in cutting off this supply. The captured officer's knowledge came with a warning. The energy nodes were heavily guarded, protected by layers of defenses designed to prevent any attack. But the Resolute's crew was undeterred. If they could strike at one of these energy nodes and destroy or sabotage it, the Divine Fleet's advantage would disappear. The human crew began detailed planning, using the intelligence gathered from the prisoner and their own reconnaissance data. Captain Ward gathered her most trusted officers in the strategy room, where holographic star maps showed the location of a vital energy node near a distant star system. This node was known as the heart of the god's power in the sector, a critical hub from which energy flowed to every ship in the fleet. Destroying it would be dangerous, but the risk was worth the reward. The plan was daring and complex. Resolute would approach the energy node disguised under a cloak of stealth technology, void detection, and launch a small strike team onto the heavily fortified installation. The team would then plant explosives to disable the core and escape before the enemy could react. Every detail was carefully considered: timing, escape routes, backup plans. Captain Ward's voice carried calm confidence as she addressed her crew. We have a chance to change the course of this war. This is where we show the galaxy that no one is invincible. We fight not just for ourselves, but for everyone who believes in freedom. Hope to determined resolve, meanwhile, aboard the flagship of the Divine Fleet. The mood was changing in a far more dangerous way. The commanders who once held absolute faith in their own superiority now found themselves wrestling with doubt and fear. Reports from the front lines spoke of increasing human resistance, unexpected losses, and attacks that seemed carefully planned. And more than just simple acts of defiance, the Divine Fleet's power, once thought to be eternal, was being challenged. Rumors began to circulate among the ranks, whispers of weakness, of vulnerability that the humans had discovered. Some officers dismissed these fears as panic, calling it a temporary setback, but others could not ignore the growing unease. The arrogant certainty that had fueled their campaign now threatened to unravel. If the humans succeeded in destroying an energy node, the consequences could be disastrous. Without the constant supply of rare energy, their ships might become nothing more than drifting hulks. The idea that their own divine status might be questioned spread like wildfire. Doubt was a dangerous enemy, and in the vast silence of space, it could destroy even the strongest of wills. Back on the Resolute, the crew prepared for their mission. The strike team was made up of the ship's most skilled fighters, engineers, and tacticians. Each member knew that failure could mean death, but success could turn the tide of the entire war. They suited up and ran final checks on their equipment. A quiet determination filled the air. The atmosphere was tense but focused. Captain Ward watched them from the bridge, feeling the weight of responsibility. This mission was not just a tactical strike. It was a symbol of human courage and defiance against seemingly impossible odds. The Resolute moved silently through the darkness, cloaked from enemy sensors as it approached the glowing star where the energy node was located. The planet-like structure that housed the node was enormous, surrounded by rings of defense platforms, automated turrets, and patrol ships. Every inch of space was watched and guarded. But the Resolute's stealth systems worked perfectly, allowing them to slip through the gaps unseen. The strike team was deployed in small craft, slipping past the outer defenses and landing on the surface of the installation. What they found was a fortress of technology, pulsing with raw energy and humming, with power beyond their understanding. The team moved quickly, disabling security systems and navigating through the labyrinthine corridors. Time was against them as alarms began to blare. The enemy had detected the intrusion. The tension reached a breaking point as the team planted explosives at the core of the energy node. The countdown began, and with every second, the chance of escape grew slimmer. Fighting their way back through waves of guards and automated defenses, the strike team raced against the ticking clock. Finally, just as the explosives detonated, a brilliant explosion lit the sky, sending a shockwave that disabled the entire energy node. The effects were immediate. Across the sector, the Divine Fleet's ships began to flicker and falter, their shields weakening and weapons losing power. On board the Resolute, cheers erupted, but there was no time to celebrate. The battle was far from over, yet this victory sent a clear message: not even gods were beyond defeat. As the Resolute pulled away from the destroyed node, Captain Ward stared into the vastness of space, knowing that the gods' greatest secret was now there. Greatest weakness. The war had entered a new phase, one where hope was no longer just a dream but a force to be reckoned with. And somewhere in the shadows, the once proud commanders of the Divine Fleet faced their own fears. Realizing that the end of their reign might be closer than they had ever imagined, the USO's Resolute approached the energy node with a mixture of precision and urgency that underscored the importance of their mission. The node, a massive orbital installation surrounding a distant star, was a fortress designed to protect the vital energy source that powered the Divine Fleet's overwhelming strength. As the Resolute slipped through enemy patrols using advanced stealth technology, Captain Elena Ward prepared her crew for what lay ahead, a fight not just against machines, but against an enemy that believed itself unstoppable. The crew's nerves were steady despite the tension, knowing that every second counted. Once inside the node's perimeter, the situation escalated quickly. Defensive drones and automated turrets opened fire, lighting up the dark expanse of space. With deadly precision, human pilots launched in agile fighters, engaging the enemy in fierce dogfights that twisted and turned around the glowing ring of the node. The space around the node became a chaotic battlefield, where every move was kritika. News of the Resolute's daring success spread rapidly across the galaxy. What began as a small human warship standing alone against overwhelming odds soon became a symbol of hope and defiance. Galactic alliances that had once watched in fear now found new courage. Species long oppressed and conquered by the Divine Fleet sent fleets of their own to join humanity's fight. Ships from distant worlds, previously neutral or hiding in the shadows, now moved boldly into battle, their colors flying proudly alongside the Resolute. The alliance was fragile, made up of many different cultures and technologies, but united by one goal: to push back against tyranny. With this newfound support, the balance of power shifted dramatically. The Divine Fleet, struggling to regain control without the energy source that fueled their might, faced coordinated attacks on multiple fronts. The battle became a stunning display of strategy and courage. Human pilots, known for their quick thinking and adaptability, led daring raids, breaking enemy lines and protecting vulnerable allies. Engineers and tacticians worked together to exploit every weakness in the enemy's defenses. The space above the contested star systems was filled with brilliant flashes of laser fire, explosions, and the roar of engines pushing to their limits. In the thick of the chaos, Captain Ward and her crew remained calm and focused, guiding their allies and making split-second decisions that turned the tide of battle. Each close call, each narrow escape, added to the story of resistance that inspired more to join the fight. Despite the Divine Fleet's desperate efforts to regroup, the pressure from the Alliance grew stronger. Their commanders, once filled with certainty, now faced fear and frustration as their ships were picked apart and their formations broken. The gods' claim of invincibility crumbled as the combined forces of humanity and their allies pushed them back step by step. The battle was not won in a single moment, but through relentless determination and sacrifice. On board the Resolute, the crew felt the weight of their achievement, but knew that this was only the beginning of a long war. Still, in the midst of the darkness, a new light shone brightly, a beacon of hope for all oppressed civilizations who had long waited for. A sign that freedom was possible. The fight that had once seemed hopeless was now a rallying cry that echoed through the stars, reminding everyone that even the mightiest could fall when faced with courage and unity. The Resolute stood not just as a ship, but as a symbol of what humanity and its allies could achieve. Captain Ward gazed out into space, knowing that the road ahead would be difficult, but confident that together they had turned the tide and opened the door to a future where no one would bow to false gods. The Divine Fleet, once towering and seemingly invincible, now found itself pushed to the brink of collapse. Their power, sustained by the rare energy nodes and their own arrogance, was fading rapidly. Ships that had once struck fear into the hearts of countless species now drifted helplessly through space, their energy cores flickering and dying. The so-called gods had no choice but to retreat, withdrawing in disarray and silence. Their dominion shattered by a force they had dismissed as insignificant humanity. The galaxy watched in awe as the mighty fleet, which had claimed absolute authority over star systems and civilizations, was driven back by a single human warship and the coalition it inspired. This was not just a military victory, it was a transformation of hope, a profound shift in the balance of power that had ruled the stars for centuries. In the wake of the Divine Fleet's retreat, systems long oppressed began to rebuild and reclaim their independence. Alien worlds that had cowered in fear now sent emissaries to the USS Resolute, recognizing the ship and its crew as symbols of resilience, courage, and unyielding spirit. Captain Elena Ward, standing on the bridge of the Resolute, felt the weight of history on her shoulders. She and her crew had become more than warriors. They were pioneers of a new era, an era where no species would claim divine right or supremacy, but where all would strive together for freedom, equality, and unity. The battles had tested every fiber of their being physically, mentally, and morally. The cost had been high, but the rewards were immeasurable. As the celebrations across the galaxy echoed, the Resolute was not idle. Its mission was far from over. With new alliances forged and old fears dispelled, the ship set its course toward uncharted territories. Captain Ward's voice carried a promise to her crew and to the galaxy at large. They would stand ready to defend the fragile peace and to confront any threats that dared to challenge the new order. The stars stretched out before them, vast and full of mystery. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it was filled with hope. The Resolute sailed into the darkness, a beacon of humanity's rise and a guardian of a galaxy reborn, through courage, unity, and unwavering determination. The story of a small human warship had changed the fate of the cosmos, proving that even the mightiest can fall when faced with the power of hope and the strength of the human spirit.